Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Jenner, and welcome to our latest webinar, Accelerating Automation with Fully Configured Automation Packs with our partner, Kelverion. Before we get started, I just want to go through a few things with you. Firstly, I just want to confirm that the webinar is being recorded. You are muted, so please use the chat facility to ask any questions. There are resources in the handout section of your control bar. There is an opportunity at the end of the presentation to ask questions within the Q&A, but also if we do get any questions during the presentation, we may stop and take questions at that point. There's a short survey at the end of the webinar. Please do complete that for us. And following the webinar, you will automatically receive a recording through to your email address that you registered with. I'd now like to introduce you to our presenters. Firstly, someone many of you will know today from AFJ Solutions, our lead solutions architect, Richard Josie. And Richard is joined today by Greg Sharman, VP of Solutions for Kelverion. And they'll be taking you through the presentation, along with myself in the background, who will coordinate the Q&A. So Richard, I'm going to hand over to you to take everyone through the presentation.
Thanks very much, Mark. Much appreciated. So yeah, just to reiterate there, if you have questions that come up through the presentation, please put them into the chat section, and Mark will make sure that that gets delivered to Greg and I in due course. So what we're going to do to start with is we're going to start with a poll. So I'm just going to launch the poll now. So you should now be seeing the question, where are you in your automation journey? So I'm just going to leave that running for a little while to give everybody a chance to answer that. Okay, excellent. I can see most people have answered. I'm just going to leave it a few more seconds to get any final responses in. Excellent. Thank you very much for those who've just added their votes in. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. Okay, so our question was, where are you in your automation journey? And the potential answers were fully up and running, started, need input, not started, need input. We have 0% on fully up and running, 40% on started, need input, and 60% on not started, need input. So that's quite interesting. That shows to me that the majority of people on this call are looking to start this journey at the moment, but quite a significant number have already started, at least in some part, along that journey, which is very good news to hear. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on with the presentation, and we'll refer back to these answers a little bit later on as well. So, okay, so in terms of our automation, what I like to talk about here is efficiency levels, and how does that apply to where you are and the various things that you're doing in your service desk. So if we look at a very simple form of request, comes into the service desk at level 1, saying here, Simon knows what to do. So this is somebody on your desk knows what to do to fulfill that request, and they get given it, they go off, they do their work, and the request gets fulfilled. Our level 2 is that we've documented what this is, and therefore we can assign this to anybody in the team who is able to follow the document and has got the right kind of access. That means that we're able to do this in a slightly more repeatable fashion. It's not just Simon's way of doing it, or John's way of doing it, or Greg's way of doing it. We've got everybody trying to follow the same document. Level 3, Show on knows what to do. So in this is where we use the service catalog template capability within Churwell, so we get tasks being automatically created which have got in them the instructions as to what to do. So now again, we have the same thing that we have with level 2, is that we can give it to anybody who's got the right access and skill set, and they can follow it through. But they've got the information now kind of directly in front of them, and we can now track progress. So we've got 5 tasks that need to be done. We can track we've completed 3 out of 5, which if we just have it in a document, we don't necessarily have that recorded in an easy to track or reportable fashion. And the next level up, Churwell just does it. This is where we get Churwell to trigger some form of automation, which then goes and does the implementation of the individual task. So what can we do to help you get to that stage of level 4 easily in some scenarios? So we have a solution pack. So here we're showing, in this example, this is the Office 365 solution pack. So this is a screenshot from a Churwell portal. So you've got your various different actions that come with the Office 365 pack. So the first one you can see there is create an Office 365 user. So when people go and interact with the portal and they choose these things, we then have automation that runs in the background. So the portal feeds into the automation, and we might need to involve the service desk. So we have interaction going on with the service desk if required. So like, for example, we might need an approval before we proceed, or we might need to have some extra information that the service desk know how to provide in order to make the automation work correctly. We then have the automation talking out to the infrastructure. So there we've got examples, AD, Exchange, SharePoint, etc. It's not a complete list, but there you've got your orchestration going into the environment. And from that, you then have a feedback where any information that needs to be updated in Churwell, going back to end users, from the infrastructure is all done. So we've got a complete loop within there. Okay, so what I want to do now is to talk through a little bit of a process. So here we've got a new user, so focusing on the creating an Office 365. So at this point in the process, we have our end user raising the ticket in Churwell. Churwell triggers the runbook. Kelverion goes and does the action. The ticket is then updated. The end user receives the information that they need to receive, and the ticket is automatically closed. So the only place in here where we've got any human interaction is to have this point here where they're actually doing the raise in the first place. So this does rely on the end user being able to supply all the information that we need upfront when they are raising the ticket. That's sometimes possible, sometimes not. It depends on each individual process. So here we have an updated version of the process where we've got an approval step. So here, end user raises a ticket, and now we have an approval created. A notification is sent to the approver. They will then follow their approval or rejection process. Assuming we have an approval, Show will then trigger the runbook, and everything else is the same. We have our Office 365 user created, the details are updated in the ticket, end user receives their information, and the ticket gets closed off. So there's a couple of key points here to pull out in terms of why we would want to do this. So first thing that we get is that we get a higher level of consistency in the way that we're doing things, because the way the automation runs, it will always make updates in the same way. So we get consistent configuration in our systems. We don't have the issue that it depends how someone was set up when they first joined the company as to what happened. People are getting set up in the same way. So that's one area where we're improving the service that we're delivering. The other is, of course, the speed. If we can do all of this within a few seconds, particularly with the previous slide, then of course we get the result that we want immediately, rather than having to wait for a human being to come around and pick it up. The other part there is we have the time savings from the human being who would be doing things which we don't have when we don't have any automation. So with that, we come on to our demonstration. So what I'd like to do now is to just step through one of those previous flows. So what I'm going to do here, I'll just refresh my login here. So this is a Chowell homepage on the portal. So you can see here, this is the AFJ Solutions Managed Services portal that I'm using for the demonstration here. I go into the service catalog. Now in our services, we've decided to have all of the Kelverion parts for the demo all in one place to make it easy. Of course, we have our other services which are available here as well. When it comes to actual implementation, this would dovetail into your service catalog. So wherever are the right places to go to. So here we go into the Office 365 and we've got the various different options which are available within the Office 365 automation pack. So I'm going to create a user. So if I create our user as being Mark Jenner, job title of CEO, and then here I'm going to choose the license type. So what's happening here is actually this data is being driven by the environment. So the Kelverion automation isn't just driving updates into the environment, it's also collecting data from the environment. So here we've got the Office 365 licenses which are actually available within this environment. So depending on how you've got your licensing set up, what options you have with Microsoft, this might not be something that you need to have on your form. You might just have a single license and everybody uses the same thing. Or you might have multiple licenses. And so we can make sure that we're passing through the right SKUs in the automation that pick up on the right license types. And what we've got here is a human translation of what that really means. So I've put in the descriptions here E3 and E5 because that's what Microsoft call their license types. And I've put E3 as being standard. And a key difference in E5 is that you get outbound telephony within your team's product. So that might be what is of interest to your organization and why you've got both. So the key point here is about translating from what the machine likes to understand and what humans like to understand, which we can do through our forms here in Chowell. So I'm going to go for an E5 license. And I'm going to submit that, take the ticket number. And now what that's going to do is it's going to go off, make a call into the Kelverion, and the Kelverion runbook will now run. And that will then go and create a user in the Office 365 Azure AD, and it will provide the details back into the ticket. So hopefully, while I've been talking, that has now run. And I have my ticket created. I can see it has not yet completed, but what I can see is where it's got to so far. So I think if I hit refresh, then we get to see the end of that. So what we've got here is the activity trace that has been going on by the automation. So you can see that it's starting processing. We can see that it's trying to create a new user with this email address. It is trying to assign a license to this user as we put into the form. And we can see from the fact that it hasn't errored in here that there's no error to go with this. But of course, there could be potentially an error that's gone on whilst the automation is running. And now I can see here, we have the details into the feedback there. And we have the status as automatically changed to resolved. Now, in the runbook that we have, there's another option. If it does error, which it will send it back to the service desk for them to investigate. One of the errors we know that we can generate is if we use up all of the licenses, then we'll get an error message here saying we can't set the license to Mark Jenner because there are no available licenses. And that means you need to go and look at how your licenses are being used and make a correction there, and then rerun the automation. So that covers the key parts in terms of the automatic creation. What I also wanted to show here, just to reinforce the point, and it's just a limited part that I'm showing here in terms of the data that we're pulling back. Here, for my user, we can see the Office 365 groups that my user is in. So if we want to do things like remove from a group, we have a drop down that shows only these in here, but it's pulling through the real Office 365 groups. So I can see from within Cherwell what groups I'm a member of and any other details that we might want to pull in from Active Directory. Okay, so that brings us back to the slides, takes us to the end of that demonstration. So Greg, we've talked through one example, which is obviously the creating a new Office 365 user, but our solution packs don't just cover that one action, do they?
No, and absolutely don't, Richard. So as Richard's shown you, he's imported the Office 365 solution pack into that Cherwell instance. We have 7 solution packs in total that we can import. So we've got a joiners, movers, leavers. So helping you automate the onboarding, the role changes within your business, and the offboarding of users out of your business to automate tasks in Active Directory, like creating users and AD groups and similar, and Office 365, and then to build and provision those users, creating groups, adding them to groups, assigning software licenses, and then obviously when you change roles, being able to remove access and giving them new roles as they take those new jobs, and then obviously when they leave, being able to define a offboarding point, and that joiners, movers, leavers can tie in with your Cherwell system, so hiring managers can submit requests, or equally we've got customers who've gone to tie in into the onboarding, the personnel HR system, so that puts an output in, which we pull in, which can be pulled into Cherwell to record those users that have been provisioned, and then they go off and fulfill those tasks. We have a solution around standard tasks. So that is the day-to-day activities that you do in your on-premise. So things like creating AD users, adding users to groups, removing users from groups, but also doing the day-to-day sort of remediation and update functions that are a typical part of help desk things. You get an incident ticket, so I want to be able to ping a box. I want to be able to get the event log information out of it. I want to be able to restart services, check the status of service, restart a service on different platforms, both Windows and Linux machines. So those day-to-day activities, the Office 365 management that Richard mentioned, and we'll look at that a little bit more in a minute. We've got VM provisioning to be able to go and provision from a self-service request, provision Hyper-V virtual machines, VMware machines, Azure Cloud, Office, Amazon EC2, equally Google or Oracle are options that we can also extend the platforms out to go and build, basically provision virtual machines on any cloud vendor, but not only can you provision them, but you can manage them. So you can give your people who requested it the ability to also self-start and stop virtual machines and restart them. So if there's a problem with the virtual machine, they can go off, they can go into the portal and submit requests to restart that virtual machine without them having any skills, knowledge, or even access to your virtualization platforms to be able to do that. So it's another labor-saving event of taking away work from saving your IT teams having to do manually labor-intensive things, and certainly from a VM provisioning point of view, saving a massive amount of elapsed time in the provisioning, because in lots of companies, provisioning machines involves many different teams creating the machine, then deploying software and packages and getting the right people to have access to it and connecting it to domains and all those sort of things that are automated. Incident and remediation is tying in your alert management tools directly into your service desk, so they're automatically creating incident tickets and routing those to the right support team. So things don't have to end up with the first line team who then have to work out, this ticket is a Windows server, therefore it should go to the Windows team, or this is a SQL alert, therefore it doesn't go to the Windows team, it goes to the SQL team, but it's actually from this particular box. So the application team in my business has said, if you get a SQL alert from this box, then we need to deal with it. So we can build all those that automatic routing of tickets so that they get assigned directly to the right teams in Cherwell based on the alert. And if you know which team's got it, they probably know what their first line diagnostics that they would like to do on that ticket. So we can build automation that will see the ticket is raised and then run the diagnostic tasks to actually put them directly into the ticket. So when you get it assigned to you, it's got all the useful information you wanted, like ping tests, net stats, event log messages, current status of services. And if you know what the diagnostics are, in 90% of cases, there is a known first line fix for that type of issue. So we can even run the automation, and that automates that remediation task. So potentially you can have a fault in your system. The automation will raise a ticket, run the diagnostics, run the remediation, confirm they fixed it, and be able to close that ticket without you having to actually do any human interaction. Another big challenge for lots of people is patching. With the focus that software security and intrusion detections got in 2020, it's an area that lots of people are looking at, and we now have a solution that gives you a patch service, automated patch service across both Windows and Linux estates that you can run on any customer size. It's a cloud-based platform, so there's no major infrastructure and similar that you have to deploy. So it's very quick and easy for us to deploy into the systems, and it has that Cherwell front end to be able to manage and administer and deciding which patches get pushed out, what the schedules are for different boxes, which machines are in different patch cycles, so you can actually use that and drive that management very simply. And the final piece in the jigsaw is you have your Cherwell system. You want to be able to have on your incident tickets about all the affected items in your network and how those relate to the services that you manage. So you need to be able to populate your CMDB. And with the automation, we can use the existing management tools that you've got that already know about the infrastructure they're managing. We can extract that information from those tools and actually take that in, configure it up, and normalize it into a state that's ready for loading into Cherwell directly into the CMDB, and then you can keep that data automatically up to date using the automation. So as you make changes, you change the amount of CPU and memory on a virtual machine, that'll get pushed through, and then we'll be able to update that system. If you decide to remove it or take it out of service, then that will automatically update and help with your asset management around new boxes being provisioned. They then appear in the management tools, they get updated so you can see they've been discovered. And then as you remove things, you can see that it's no longer under management, and then you can successfully remove it from your environment. So we have a number of those solution packs which tie directly into the Cherwell platform to go and drive that automation.
So this is all the solution packs that we can use to rapidly get up and running, which is the focus of our webinar today. But I guess from this, Greg, we can also expand beyond those particular tools which are part of these packs. Or
absolutely, yes, Richard. So these are fully configured solution packs that we have built out based on other customers looking to do automation and driving automation. What do they need to do? But you can use the whole framework that we have with AFJ, with the Cherwell and the automation, to basically extend those into other functions or build completely new processes that you can do. From an automation point of view, as long as the system that you have, if you know what commands you want to run against it, and it's got an API or a command line that we can electronically access, you could automate it. And then it's a case of working out which ones make sense and where the benefits are to your business. And we've got a way of helping you work out where the benefits are as well.
Excellent, lovely dovetail into our next point, Greg. So just a couple of things I just wanted to reiterate from what you'd gone through there. You said about cloud VM provisioning and being able to do a reboot directly out of the tool.
Yep.
I've certainly been working on this recently, where the people I've been working with and our clients are Cherwell administrators. They've got access to get onto the machines, but they don't have access to the VM environment to be able to do things like reboot it. So if you can log into Windows, you can do a reboot, but if you can't log into Windows and you need a hard reboot done, you need to go off to the infrastructure team. And then you wait 2 to 3 days for that to occur because they're busy with a huge project at the moment, and pre-production systems that need a reboot are not the biggest thing on their list at the moment. So you have to wait until you get to the front of the queue. And it's precisely because these administrators are Cherwell administrators, not cloud administrators, and they're not given the keys to the whole cloud kingdom, which they need to get into the interface to be able to do that. So that's a very good area, which applies to all of these packs in terms of the rights needed. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to the value calculator, which is how we work out what we want to automate and why, I guess. So
Absolutely.
Here is the value calculator.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the value calculator that we've put together. What it has in here, so starting on the summary, is you've got metrics that you can build it. So it's a view, and it allows you to work out which of the automation solutions will add benefit and how much benefit they would add if you implement it in your business. So you've got some figures you can punch in. So the number of users in your business, the number of servers that you have in your business, and equally, we want to be able to give you an indicative of what it costs you to run this manually today. So you've got a value on what we call the loaded cost for a level 1 resource. So we've got multiple currencies, so it's currently on US dollars. Rich, let's put that down to GB. So the industry average in the UK at the moment is a level 1 resource. It's called the loaded cost is their employment salary, their insurance, national insurance, holiday costs, that sort of things. The industry average currently is about £38,000. So if all of your IT tasks were done by a level 1 person, we can use that to give you an idea of what it currently costs to run manually. We then have a number of assumptions down the right-hand side, which shows you the number of days worked and the number of hours that a typical person worked. So you can work out how much time you spend manually doing these activities. And when we say manually doing them, what do we mean? So if we click on the Office 365 tab, each of our solution packs has a tab in the calculator. And what we've got, as you can see in here, each of those requests that Richard showed through the portal, we have an entry in here, and they've got automation that goes with them. And we know, based on the many years of doing it, I've been doing automation for 14 years. Over that time, I have done numerous process assessments with customers and fully tied in with industry analysis and things like that. And we know, for example, creating an Office 365 user in the Office 365 admin console, getting all the bits of creating the user, assigning all the licenses, making sure they've got all the application services, can take, or typically takes, 60 minutes to create a user. Each of the other offerings have got different times, so we know what they take from a manual change and modification point of view. We know how long it would take automation to run them. And what that allows us to do is to give you the amount of time it takes you to manually do it, what that would cost in using that fully loaded cost to give you a manual cost for doing that, and then we know how much it's going to cost for automation to run. The other bit you do is you then work out how often do you do it. So you've got this operator down the right-hand side of inputs as to volumes of competitors. So the industry average for creating a user is 10%. So most companies have a 10% turnover of staff in any 1 year. But it depends on your industry. So 10% turnover is normal, for example, in manufacturing and finance and sort of business entities. But if you're working in anything in the retail sector or construction or in the hospitality section, then most of those companies have a much higher turnover of staff. So you can change the numbers to indicate how often do you actually do this. So if you're working, as we were doing with an entertainment company who hire loads of people for 6 months over the busy summer periods, and then they release them all, from an onboarding point of view and creating Office 365 users, they have a 40% turnover per year, because the bulk of their employees come, they stay for 6 or 8 months, and then they go. Then they might hire them again the next year, but that's points. So that's how we can change and modify those numbers in the platform. And what that allows us to do is then pull through those records to give you those properties. So if we go to the summary tab, we can actually see how bringing these values through each of the solutions, you can pick which solutions you're interested in based on the value tabs. And as you click on the little icons next to the buttons, that activates them, and they will bring through the summaries at the bottom of the screen. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can see there is a summary of costs. And what we've got in here is we pull through, based on the fact we picked Office 365, there is a certain savings that we make from running automation. So the difference between basically that's the manual, it would cost you to actually do that manually. From that, there are some software costs and automation costs that we have from the platform. And then if you were doing it manually, if we automate these processes, how much in people time would we actually save out the process? So in the case of the metrics we've just been doing, we can see that if we automate Office 365 management for our 1,500 users on a 10% churn rate and all the other stuff, we could save 0.9 of a person, so almost the equivalent of one full-time person over the year. That's what is spent manually managing and provisioning Office 365. And what you can see there at the bottom is effectively from the costs that we've got, how can we manage and return those? What's going to be the return on investment over the years? So we can use this calculator, and we work with customers to actually look at what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What things have you got in your Cherwell system about the tickets that you've got, the requests that you've got? We can take that in with those numbers. You can put them into the calculator and actually make this calculator reflect the work that you actually do on a day-to-day, month by month, week by week, month by month basis, as in this is what our service management and IT teams have to do to keep the business running. If we automate it, these are the automation benefits that we can make, and it helps you work out how quickly you can, where you can get the benefits, how much benefits you can have, and how much time you can actually free up from your IT staff to focus on those other critical activities that you need to do that you'd wish you'd got to if only you had some free time.
And this is certainly something that we've been finding, Greg, is this getting free time is one of the big drivers that we're seeing for this. So in terms of the savings, most of the customers that we AFJ have been working with, they're not looking to actually save money by reducing headcounts. They're looking to free up time to enable people to do other things which are more useful and provide better service back into their organization. So they're looking at it as a service improvement driver.
Absolutely.
I've certainly found this exercise extremely helpful in working out, for a start, should you automate certain activities? You know, if you know you only do it 2 or 3 times a year, you may not need to automate it. Whereas if you know you're doing it 2 or 3 times an hour, then you could get quite a big saving out of it. And this really leads to it. We've had several customers where we've worked through off of their service catalog ticket history data and used that to validate what we've got in these tabs.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any more on the value calculator?
No.
Okay, let's go back to the slides then, and we'll move through into our summary. Okay, so first and most important thing to understand is this isn't a new service desk. This is something which builds on top of the foundation that you're already have and are creating. So if we go back to our first slide where we had the 4 levels of efficiency, where we started with people on the desk know what to do, if we then can categorize those tickets with a good service catalog, we can then provide service catalog templates, which we can then layer into automation. So it's part of the journey rather than a ripping out what you've currently got and replacing it with incremental updates being made. What we're doing is wrapping your service desk in automation and with that self-service. So it will also help to encourage and increase the use of the self-service portals that you have. And it's an incremental process that we're doing this in. We're not looking to automate everything in one go. We would be using the value calculator to work out what is the most important things that we can do and start with those and expand upon that. So it's a gradual increase, say, as you slowly wrap the service desk in automation, so rather than changing it. Access and permission controls. This one always takes me back. Many years ago, I worked on a service desk working for a large energy provider in the UK. Within a week of joining the organization as a temp, I had domain access with administrative rights on 3 or 4 different domains and around about 15 different applications because I needed to be able to reset passwords. And so I had rights that were far in excess of what I actually needed to do my job. And I could have done an awful lot of damage to the organization that I was working for if I was to use the rights in the wrong way. So this is a way of being able to mitigate and to control that. And here, this last one is empowerment, and I particularly like this as well. If you need to get things done and you can go onto a portal and click on the right options and the things get done, that means that you have the power to do it yourself and you're not reliant on others in order to be able to do that. And that's what you're doing by automating things off of your portal, is you are empowering your end users into being able to make decisions and move forward with them. Rather than having to plan them out and to wait, which massively increases the amount of service or the quality of service which you're providing. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the presentation part and brings us into the Q&A part. So I'm hoping with this, Mark, we've got some good questions coming in because we've left quite a bit of time in the webinar for people to ask questions.
Yes, we've got some immediate questions through, Rich, so I shall go through those with you and Greg. And please, to everybody out there, if you've got any more questions, do take the opportunity to ask them. And also just a reminder that the handouts are available for those who want to click and download those. So the first question we've got through, and Richard and Greg, I'll let you decide who wants to take each answer, but the first one's quite straightforward. It's how long does it take to implement one of the automation solution packs?
Okay.
That's a very good question, Mark. I'll let you go first with that, Greg.
Yeah. We have implemented, so those solution packs, they have standard functionality in them with all the automations pre-configured, fully configured, and the ties into those packs. So we can have those solutions as they're defined, ready and running in your environment within 5 days. So you can have imported the packs
quickly as that.
As quickly as that.
So that gets the systems up and running and talking to each other, right, Greg? We're now able to have what we showed on the demonstration.
Yep.
What I would add on to that is that it is going to be pretty unusual for a customer to just deploy the pack directly onto their portal and allow any user to submit any of those requests without wanting to wrap some extra process around it. So typically inside Cherwell, you would want to make some adaptations. And part of this also depends on the level of maturity that you're currently at. So as an example, we talked earlier about service catalog templates. What we might need to do is create the service catalog templates as a part of this implementation to make it usable. We might need to update the approvals flow if it's not currently in place, or we might need to make sure that certain requests have approvals before they go into the automation. So all of that is extra work we need to do on top. And I would say typically there what we're looking at is, say, the 5 days to get us up and running with the automation running, and 5 days or more in order to get something useful. So we've got that full end-to-end from a CHOL perspective. Of course, that does vary depending on what a customer actually needs.
Okay, thank you both. And the next question we've got then is, we have a complicated approval process. How many approval chains can automation handle? Who would like to take that one? Greg, do you want to start with that one?
Oh, I was going to say I'll let Richard start with that one, because it's.
I'll happily take that one, and then I'll let you add in, if you like, Greg,
Yep.
at the end of it. So the way I'd answer that one, Mark, is that the way we would typically handle approvals is through CHOL. And in CHOL, you can have approvals which leads to another layer of approval, for example, going to someone's line manager and then going to a department manager before allowing a certain request to be fulfilled. I've certainly seen this where people have got access to financial systems, and we need to have 2 layers of approval to make sure that we're not providing access to data to someone who shouldn't be given that, and we've got a proper auditable trail. And we have that handled in CHOL already. So from an automation perspective, there's no limit to the number of approvals that you might need, because it's all handled within CHOL, and the automation only kicks in once we want it to from the process perspective.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Greg, that does probably largely cut you out, but
Oh, no. What I was going to say is that with automation, we do, if you want approval steps, the place you want it is in the self-service. So in this case, driven by the service desk for those approval steps. Where automation has added extra things in is when you've got approvers who you want to have as part of your approval process who don't necessarily have direct access to your service desk. So we've had customers who have distributed workforces who are part of that approval workflow, but don't necessarily have direct access to your CHOL service desk. So we're able to extend the approval workflows that are controlled by CHOL out, for example, to emails sent to that remote user to say, in CHOL, there is a request that you need to approve. Here's the details of the request. Please read it and reply to this email with approve or decline in the subject text. When the automation gets that email back, it can go into CHOL on behalf of that user and say, Richard Josie says, yes, this can be approved. So he can sit on his beach in the Maldives and still approve the deployment of a request from his mobile phone.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Just for clarification, Richard won't be sitting in the Maldives working away just before he gets any ideas on that one. We'll move on to the next question. We are moving from an on-premise to the cloud. Should I hold off looking at automation until this is completed?
I'll take that one. And the simple answer is no. Because the way you will ultimately find that you will run some things on premise and some things in the cloud. And most companies are running what we call a hybrid environment. So you're doing parts of both. But the key thing that people find when they move to the cloud is the functionality and the capabilities of the platforms that you're running are the same on premise or in the cloud, but how you manage and administer them are very different, because the interfaces you get are those provided by the cloud administrator. So there's quite a learning curve for people to understand how to run and manage things in that cloud infrastructure, even though, for example, it's still a SQL database. The benefit of implementing your automation as you're looking to move into the cloud is that using that self-service portal and the automation, we can basically take away the need for every one of your users to now become an expert or even have systems access to all of your cloud systems to be able to interact, assess, check status, and do remediation activities in that cloud infrastructure. So you can actually control and manage how you move into the cloud in a much more streamlined and efficient manner, because people don't have to become cloud admins. Office 365 is a great example. If you want to create a new user, quite actually, you would have to be an administrator. But you can divide that administration functionality up into a Teams administrator and a SharePoint administrator and a Microsoft Dynamics administrator. But if I want to onboard a user who has access to all of those systems, I have to be a global domain admin to actually be able to add them to everything, or I have to pass the work to each individual admin. The power of that automation as you're moving into cloud is you can make the automation tool the one admin, and then other people don't need to know how or have any access to go and do those things that they don't need to do. Exactly as Richard said with his energy provider. You don't have to be a god on the systems to be able to fulfill the requests that you get in. So it's a massive enabler for your first line teams as you move from on-premise into the cloud, for them to be able to fulfill requests that are raised to them directly without having to give it to your cloud teams or your level 3, level 4 people who understand how cloud needs to get done. They can go, oh, you need a virtual machine, right? I happen to know that's now on Microsoft Azure. I can go into the self-service portal on your behalf, punch in some numbers, and hey presto, you've got a virtual machine that's been approved, and here's the access.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd also add to that, Greg, is if you are moving to the cloud, if you've automated some of the work that you're doing, you have more spare time to move to the cloud.
Absolutely.
So even without the benefits that you talk to, simply the time benefit as well will help take the weight off the IT teams to enable them to support that migration.
Okay.
That's my 2 pence extra, Mark.
No, that's great. No, thank you both for that. And we've got one final question through. So I'd say to anyone, if you do have a question you would like to ask, please do register the question now, and I will ask this one presumably as the last question now. So, with the self-service portal, would I need to buy a portal, or can I use the portal in my service desk?
Okay, so what we demonstrated was the portal within our Chillwell system, and that's what we do with our customers who are onboarding with Kelverion. Is we front the single portal, which is the Chillwell portal. So there's no need to invest in anything else.
No. Equally, if you have some form, there are companies who have an existing self-service front end that they've used for corporate work before. If you do have one, then the automation, the solutions we've got, we can extend them to actually tie that capability you've seen in Chillwell into an existing portal. So if you've got a large workforce who are used to going to company.intranet.homepage for a portal of things where they currently submit something and then a human being picks it up, we could have the automation take that request in from the portal and go into Chillwell and submit that as a request, which would drive all the same workflow that Richard's just demonstrated, and then push it back out when it's been done. So you're not, absolutely, the default, as Richard said, is we do it through the Chillwell portal, but you're not limited to doing it through one portal. We can do it through as many portals as required, and can coordinate them all, so you still have all of that tracking and record keeping in Chillwell, because effectively the remotes become a front end to pushing a request that we pass through the Chillwell system for record and document keeping, and then fulfillment.
Okay, thank you both again. We've had one final question just while we're talking, so we'll just take this question, and then that will be it, and it's probably one that we'll need to follow up on. So there's been a question asked, is the value calculator available for us? I'm presuming this is something that we would want to go through individually with customers, but we can take them through it on an individual basis. Greg, Richard?
Yes. Yep. So the value calculator is available for companies to use, for customers to use and input their values. And we can certainly, both ourselves and AFJ can work with you to actually populate and fill out that form to help it give you the information, the details that actually make sense to you as a business.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, that brings us then to an end of the questions, and from a timing point of view, I think we are where we wanted to be. So we'll take this opportunity now to wrap up. I would like, first of all, to thank Greg and Richard for their efforts with the presentation this afternoon. Thank you both very much. And I'd like to thank everyone else for attending. I hope you found it very useful. And if you've got any further questions on automation, please do reach out to us. And I look forward to speaking to you all soon. So take care and speak to you soon. Thank you.